What's going on, guys? We are back, baby. We got another killer video from Preston Stewart. He is the goat of this of talking about global conflicts and the latest and greatest, what's going on, specifically here in Ukraine, where I am located. So this one says a deep strike just exposed Russia's vulnerability. This behind me here, as you see, is the Flamingo cruise missile. This is Ukraine's response to not receiving Tomahawk cruise missiles from the United States as they were kind of negotiating on receiving, and then the United States administration had a conversation with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and the U.S. administration decided they would not send Tomahawks to Ukraine. So Ukraine came up with the Flamingo. This is really cool, man. So before we jump into it, please like, share, subscribe. We're at 42,000 subs right now. We're pushing to 50,000, baby. Let's get there. Let's go. Just up and up, man. I appreciate you guys' support. Seriously, I genuinely believe the more people that see this kind of content, whether it's through my channel or Preston's or anybody else's, regardless, it will turn into hopefully more support for Ukraine, whether it's just people thinking it like, oh, this is still happening, right? There's so many comments I see, especially in the media, on social media, about people saying, wait, that's still going on? Yeah, man, it's definitely still going on, and it's in a very crucial state of the war right now. So we will jump into it, but I've got to say, man, you guys have been blowing up these new T-shirts that we put on the merch site, and this was based off of your guys' recommendation. I told you I had this idea of making an ORC SHASHLIK barbecued orc. So what it translates into, T-shirt, and here it is. It's got the Slava Ukraine on the chest, on the sleeve. You've got the different breed. And then on the back, most importantly, you've got the orc getting barbecued on the skewer, orc shashlik, Ukrainian colors. And you guys, again, have just been blowing this up. And I've also seen comments of saying, since we just have this for till the end of this month, right? I've seen comments saying, make this like a monthly thing to where like I come up with a new shirt idea. And it's funny because a couple days ago, I was thinking about coming up with a, spoiler alert, some kind of a flamingo missile, but the actual animal flamingo that looks like a missile or something. Maybe do that for next month or month after, whatever. But if you are interested in getting one of these, link will be in the description. If not, that's cool too. Let's jump into this Preston video. Here we go. Nope. Here we go.
Tomahawk land attack. So overnight, a Flamingo visited Russia. Not the pink bird kind, but the missile kind. The FP5, Ukraine's new domestically manufactured cruise missile. And the fact that it made it to a target more than 1,000 kilometers away during daylight hours led some in Russia to ask, if we can't stop this thing, what chance do we stand against all of NATO? Love to see it. Now, diving into what we know, Ukrainian President Zelensky issued a statement earlier today saying, quote, "We continue to apply Ukrainian long-range sanctions against Russian military facilities in the oil industry. Specifically this night, Ukrainian
I love how he calls them sanctions. When they're bombing the oil industry and infrastructure of Russia, he calls it sanctioning their oil industry.
P-5 Flamingo missiles hit a military plant in Cheboksary, which supplies the occupiers' army with components for drones and missiles, specifically electronic warfare modules for their long-range munitions. Military informant, a Russian war correspondent, said, quote, "It is impossible to overestimate the need for effective air defense at this plant, as it produces jam-resistant modules of the Comet series, which are installed on reconnaissance UAVs, kamikaze strike drones, and glide bombs and missiles." So again, these are electronic warfare modules that prevent Russian long-range munitions from being jammed by Ukrainian electronic warfare. Kind of important. And we've got Russian sources talking about we need added air defense in that location. Now, to give you an idea of how significant this is, this plant was roughly 1,000 kilometers from Ukrainian territory.
Wow.
That's long range, and I think we're losing sight of that as the war goes on. There was a time not that long ago where this was well outside the range of anything that Ukraine could launch. Even stuff provided by their Western partners were not going to reach 1,000 kilometers inside of Russian territory. That has changed. So right now we're looking at the FP5 Flamingo. Ukraine is on track supposedly to produce quite a few of these month in and month out. The FP5 has a 1,150 kilogram warhead with an estimated 3,000 kilometer range. As a comparison,
that's crazy.
Essentially, we're talking about a cruise missile here from Ukraine, although most indications are that it is a bomb with a jet engine and wings attached to it, which makes it pretty heavy and high explosive when it reaches the target. A good comparison here would be the U.S. Tomahawk land attack missile. So we fired a lot of those recently during the opening phases of Operation Epic Fury. The Tomahawk, for comparison, has a 310 kilogram warhead and an estimated 2,500 kilometer range. There are a lot of different variations of the Tomahawk, so this is, very touchy in terms of a comparison, but it's kind of like the most well-known Western cruise missile. So 1,150 kilograms versus 310 kilograms for the warhead, 3,000 kilometer range for the FP5 versus, on the high end, 2,500 unclassified for the Tomahawk. Now, one thing to stress is my understanding is the guidance systems, the flight controls, all of that is much more advanced in the Tomahawk, and that would not be surprising. But you're talking about, with the Flamingo, a big warhead flying a long way. And last night, what we saw is it is accurate enough and jam-resistant enough to strike a target deep inside of Russia. Speaking to this, a couple different Russian sources.
I mean, you got to think 1,000 kilometers into Russia. This missile has to pass through so many electronic warfare and jammers and different air defense assets that it clearly was able to defeat one way or the other, whether that's by the altitude that it's flying or the speed that it's flying, I don't know, but that's a big deal. And 3 Tomahawk missiles are big missiles. So to have a somewhat of a version, like Preston said, of a Tomahawk, but 3 times the amount of explosives is insane.
Here, Maxim Klishnikov, a war correspondent, said, quote, "Huge holes in the Russian air defense system as relatively simple cruise missiles, a small jet aircraft, flew directly from Ukrainian territory, spending at least an hour and a quarter in the air. They did not have low-altitude flight mode to avoid terrain obstacles, yet they were not detected, intercepted by fighter jets, or shot down by air defense systems. In the event of an attack by the U.S. or NATO countries, which could launch hundreds and thousands of cruise missiles like the Tomahawk, Storm Shadow, or JASSM, we would be unable to repel it and would suffer massive damage." That is kind of what we're seeing. Something to keep back of mind is if this relatively slow, not all that advanced Ukrainian long-range cruise missile is able to fly through 1,000 kilometers of Russian territory, It wasn't that long ago. I mean, even at the start of the war, the Russian air defense was kind of vaunted as like one of the most robust air defense systems in the entire world, if not the most sophisticated and layered air defense network. And we're watching Ukraine fly essentially a minibus through Russian airspace during daylight to strike a sensitive facility. Russian mill blogger Fighter Bomber said, quote, "It's hard to say the exact reasons why the air defense has failed. These missiles are launched in single units, so it's not like they're overloading our air defense systems. So there could be 2 reasons. Either they messed up or there were no air defense systems where it was flying. But nobody can figure out how this can happen." This is something that we've been seeing more and more. Every single night, Russia is shooting down a lot of Ukrainian drones. I think last night the number was like 350 that they say they intercepted across Russian airspace. So there is a volume question there, no doubt. But every single one of these launches provides details back to Ukraine to where they can find out where the air defense systems are and where they are not. Yep. They are not blindly firing in all these different directions. What I would expect happened here is over the course of dozens of launches over the last few weeks or months, Ukraine has mapped out the location of certain Russian air defense assets. When they found a gap at this range, a plant that required a large warhead, they determined that it was safe enough to expend a Flamingo cruise missile because they figured it would get through based off of where they had mapped all of the defensive positions. This is not just slinging things into the air and hoping they get through. Every single launch is data gathered, and we're seeing the holes exposed inside of the Russian air defense.
Wow.
Now, on the Russian side, we're seeing this as well, right? Ukraine striking inside of Russia is new. We're seeing a change in tactics. We're seeing a change in strategy. And that is the nature of the war right now, where Ukraine, by and large, is innovating. They had to to find a way to stay in the fight. Russia is innovating as well. I don't want to take that away. If you look at the Shahed and the Garand-style drone today versus what was first imported to Russia back at the start of the war, drastically different, much harder to intercept today.
Bigger explosives.
But there is some pushback inside of Russia because, by and large, they're still carrying out the same types of strikes and going after the same targets that they have for 4+ years now. And if it hasn't worked for 4 years, why is it going to change in the next week, month, or 4 years going forward? Russian mill blogger 2 Majors said, quote, sometimes there are strikes on energy infrastructure, then on railway facilities, then on locomotives, then somewhere else. And then they move away entirely from these targets. We've seen that, right? It's the energy infrastructure. Then the sun comes out, spring comes about, and they go, rail lines maybe now. He says probably by the 5th year, the Russian strike systems, one could have already torn apart the same bridges across the Dnipro. And if someone thinks this is unimportant, they can study the reasons for the withdrawal from Kherson and the current situation on the new Russia highway. This is becoming a constant gripe from the Russian side. And look, in the opening days of the war, there was some pushback of why doesn't Russia just destroy every one of the bridges crossing the Dnipro? And at the beginning of the war, the argument was, well, Russia needs those, right? This is a conundrum faced by any military force. If you destroy the bridges, yes, it makes it harder for the enemy to enter the fight and resupply their positions, but then you have to eventually cross that bridge that you destroyed. So kind of a double-edged sword. That is long gone, man. Russia is not crossing the Dnipro anytime soon, yet the vast majority of those bridges remain. They're noticing that inside of Russia and getting frustrated that they still stand. And the comparison they draw there is they say down in Kherson, the reason for the Russian withdrawal from the right bank or the west side of the river was because there were just a couple bridges keeping them supplied, and it was untenable. So with those bridges out, Russia was forced to withdraw. Right now, we're seeing, and we'll get into this deeper tomorrow in a video, the Middle Strike campaign paying dividends in the south. Some of that is due to bridges being taken out, or at least partially disrupted. Then 2 Majors continues by saying Russia spends colossal resources on strikes against Ukraine, especially considering the cost of weapon systems. High-tech missiles carrying tons of warheads and maneuvering at enormous speeds cost far more than Ukrainian drones that overwhelm our air defense with numbers. But the effectiveness of this remains unclear. That is, what is the ratio of rubles spent for damage to the enemy? Based on the situation in Russia's frontline regions, it is clearly insufficient. Now, this is an ongoing debate with militaries around the world. Like, we're dealing with this in the United States right now as well. And to sum it up, it's should you prioritize spending a lot of money on relatively few but high-tech munitions? In Russia, this would be like the Kinzhal missile, right? Or in the United States, it might be like the Tomahawk. So expensive, high-end weapon systems that work and can bypass or try to bypass enemy air defenses. The other end of this spectrum is the low-cost, attritable volume munitions. In Russia, it's the Shahed or the Garand. In Ukraine right now, it's the FP1, FP2. We'll see the cost on the Flamingo. Maybe the FP5 falls into that as well. But the idea that it's just it's a matter of numbers. Send more drones at their air defenses than they can shoot down. And we're seeing that play out with Ukrainian success right now. So I don't know that there's a perfect mix that we've landed upon quite yet. But from 2 Majors' point of view, Russia is still leaning too heavily in the high-end weapon systems. They're not getting what he would view adequate trade-off for that spend. All right, quick fundraiser update here. We are well on our way in our summer campaign. 13,000 euros already raised of a 97,000 euro goal. You can learn more about that campaign in the description below. We've also got a new collab going with Car for Ukraine. I'll pop that up on the screen here. Shirts and sweatshirts with their design. So they don't sell these. All right, so they send these out to some partners, some donors. There's just not a lot of them available, but every time I would wear that shirt, people would say, that's really cool. And I get it. It is really cool. So we talked to the great people over at Car for Ukraine. They agreed to let us host their design on a t-shirt and a sweatshirt, and then 100% of the proceeds that come through the shop for those items go directly back to Car for Ukraine. So if you like the shirt, it's an awesome shirt. Awesome sweatshirt, but also if you want to support that organization, support a good cause, that's another way to do it. That link will be in the pinned comment and description below. That's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.
That's cool, man. Check out Preston and his fundraisers, man. Those cars for Ukraine, when Preston was here, not most recently, but the time before, I was with him when they delivered a couple of those cars from that organization. They're the real deal, man. They they're basically refurbished and they're up armored. So they've got these heavy steel doors and armor all through the inside. Like that door when I opened it was like, and then closing it, you're like, I would kill or would have killed to have one of those out east, man. Those are sweet vehicles, so check it out. But another great video. This is just more piggybacking and more evidence that the tide is changing, and this technological and long range munition and drone revolution is having a big effect, positive effect for Ukraine. Coming up with these missiles like Flamingo that are like kind of like semi-smart, semi-dumb bombs, but they could fly really far. They pack a hell of a punch, and they're pretty accurate to fly 1,000. Like Preston said, fly 1,000 kilometers and hit a building. That's pretty good for a dumb bomb, right? So this is I just want to continue posting videos like this so people see like things are changing. There is a difference here. If there was ever a time for people or governments, nations to start jumping on the bandwagon to help Ukraine, it's right now. Help that leaning tower that's starting to lean, help push it over onto the Russians, man. Anyways, we'll leave it at that. Please like, share, subscribe if you want an ORC SHASHLIK t-shirt. Link in description, and that's all I got. We'll see you in the next video.